Sergio Marchi, thank you for joining us. Congratulations on the book.
Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure.
So obviously you believe in the value of a public life, hence what you have put together here over the last 2 years. But I'm thinking to a year ago where nothing was getting done here in Ottawa. And that was essentially because of partisan games, political bickering. And at the end of the day, when you consider these political times versus when you were a cabinet minister, public life has become more toxic. Is this too hard of a call to tell Canadians to get involved in a process that has, quite frankly, turned a lot of Canadians off?
Yeah, you're right. I think, and it's not just Canada, I think when you look across the globe, politics has become more polarized, more divisive, and quite frankly, more nasty. And it does turn Canadians off, and it discourages people from thinking about a public life career, which this book is all about. I'm concerned that particularly young Canadians are giving public life a pass. In fact, if you look at our House of Commons today, barely 3% of the MPs are under 30. And so the combination is very worrying. So I thought, let me put pen to paper and see if we can make it a little more encouraging and easier for young Canadians to enter, serve, and hopefully survive the political arena.
Okay, so what's the danger then? I get the observation you're making. Not enough young people are involved in the political process right now, but what's the danger of that?
Well, I think the danger is that we don't get the talented people, the young, the energetic, good ideas, new ideas. I mean, the whole issue is that artificial intelligence has incredible potential, but AI won't run a country. AI won't provide people with empathy, and it won't safeguard our values. What we will always need is political leadership. Good people, bold voices, big ideas. That's what we need going forward, and particularly the young people exciting their own generation first and foremost, and then the rest of Canadians.
Okay, and again, I hear what you're saying, but in your book, you do reference a few things that would make someone cynical, and these are your experiences from decades ago, let alone today when social media is involved. But you write in your book that always be aware, and this is some of the advice you give to young people thinking about going to politics. You write, always be aware of the political games and manipulation that political parties can play with nomination meetings.
Absolutely.
That's nomination alone. So has the current generation and the generation before just essentially ruined it for the next generation?
It's become toxic. The relationship between the opposition and the government compared to my era has become very polarized. So yeah, I think parliamentary decorum has been the loser when oppositions go over the red line. And I was in opposition, and we had the Rat Pack, and they went way over the red line. So they helped energize our party, but again, political decorum has suffered. Now, for all the negativity, and it's a tough business to get in, but what I also point out in the book is that there's great satisfaction. Winning an election, entering cabinet, helping your constituents, moving pieces of legislation, meeting and working with fascinating people and traveling your country and getting to know your country better. In other words, we're very well aware of the negatives, but we have to strengthen the positives about public life. Because it was tough, but if it wasn't for the satisfaction, no one would stay. And people do stay because the moments of those great highlights overcome the downsides that you get, and it gives you the energy and the courage to continue. So there's lots of positives, and we've got to up the positives as opposed to just getting to know what the negatives are.
Okay, so what motivated you? Because you did very well in politics, and here you are out of politics, but still obviously making a contribution to this country. What inspired you to keep going on?
I became a community activist very early in life. My last year of high school and all through my university, I was in community affairs. I ran a newspaper, I ran a youth club, I ran a ratepayers association, and I loved changing our corner of the world modestly. And when I graduated as an urban planner, I said, I like to plan, but I love my community work more. What can I find that would bring me that kind of satisfaction? And politics, first and foremost, serves the community. And so I was very pleased in politics, and you got to develop a thick skin. That's the other thing I describe in the book. If you don't have a thick skin, then the arrows will kill you with time. And the toughest part of political life, I find, is not necessarily the politicians themselves, but their families, their mothers, their wives, their husbands, their kids. My mother always used to say, but why are they saying that? And I said, listen, Mom, it's not true, but this is part of democracy, and sometimes it doesn't look pretty.
Yeah, sometimes it doesn't look pretty. But, you know, I was speaking recently to pollster Daryl Bricker and journalist John Ibbotson. They themselves have a new book out as well. And in this book, they reveal that 40% of Canadians under the age of 35 would be willing to join the United States. Young people willing to join the United States, and Daryl and John say that's an indication of Canada's failure to secure a future for those people. So when you hear that statistic and consider the call to arms that you essentially lay out in this book for young Canadians, what would you say to anyone who's thinking of getting involved in politics up against, I guess, this existential threat against not only the Canadian economy right now, but even the Canadian polity?
I find those stats frightening in terms of a pro-American bent, because most Canadians that I bump into have no time for the president of the United States of America. And what I would say to Canadians, do you think that politics is tough? Yeah, it is. But it's a terribly exciting moment for all the crises that are surrounding us, both economically and politically, thanks to Donald Trump. But that's the very time when you want to jump in. In fact, I found some of the most fascinating moments was when we had a referendum in Quebec, when we had the issue of capital punishment, when we had the Meech Lake debate, when we had the free trade election. Lots of tension, lots of pressures. But man, you wouldn't want to be anywhere else except at the center of that political universe and trying to make a difference. That's what it's about. Making a difference, turning the corner, encouraging people to stand their ground, and let's build Canada and take our democracy to a higher level. Does it sound idealistic? Yeah. But when we think about public leadership, we got to think big.
The book is called Pursuing a Public Life, How to Succeed in the Political Arena. Some great practical tips and memories as well shared in this. Sergio Marchi, really enjoyed that. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.